Hey YouTube, this video is a free extract from my larger course called the Complete Vray 5 for SketchUp course for kitchen design. Do check it out in the link in the description. Now let's get started. Alright, so in this course you learn all the basics of Vray 5 and how to create a cool looking Scandinavian kitchen right from scratch. You learn all the latest features in Vray 5 which will definitely help you create awesome renderings in no time. And by the end of the course, you will be confident enough to start taking up rendering work and also start building your interior portfolio with nice looking photorealistic renders. So like I mentioned in the start, this course is part of a larger course which you will find in the link in the description. There's about 9 to 10 videos which I've added in this video. The rest of the videos, which is about 24 lectures, you would find in the course link below. Now without further ado, I'm going to start with the course intro and then we'll work our way towards setting the camera, setting the lighting, working with various PBR materials and a lot more. There's a lot of cool advanced stuff in this video. So I hope you find it useful. Please do like and subscribe if you like content like this. And please do check out my courses as well. I'll see you in the next video. Cheers. Hey guys, welcome to the Complete Vray for SketchUp course for kitchen design, where I'm going to be taking you step by step in rendering and post-producing this awesome contemporary kitchen scene using Vray 5 for SketchUp. In the process, we will learn how to set up our camera using scenes in SketchUp, use various lighting techniques to light up our kitchen scene, create your own awesome custom material library in Vray which you can use for all your projects, learn how to add PBR materials in Vray 5 the right way for various materials, learn how to round off edges automatically inside Vray, use the latest features in Vray like Vray Lightmix to further adjust our lights, and also use Chaos Cosmos to add decor and more to our space. Then we learn how to add render elements to learn how to post-produce our render on Photoshop and change certain materials, and finally create our awesome kitchen render in Vray 5. Apart from the main render scene that we learn how to create in this course, I'll also teach you guys how to create a night render, additional post-production techniques in Photoshop, leveraging batch rendering so you can sit back and relax and watch all your scenes get rendered, and also you learn how to create this awesome depth of field render. This course is based on a real life project done by IBK Melis of Melis Design Studio in Netherlands, for whom I got the chance to work for and also create awesome renders. Feel free to reach out to her if you'd like to get your interior spaces designed in and around Europe. So this course is jam-packed with a lot of valuable information, and by the end of the course, you'll definitely be confident in using Vray and be able to create amazing renders just like this to convince all of your clients and also bag a lot more projects, and most importantly, build an awesome online portfolio. Now without further ado, let's jump straight to the course. I'll see you guys in the course inside. Cheers. Alright, so before we get to the modeling and rendering of our kitchen, I'm going to be showing you the various shortcuts that I use. For example, if I want to hide stuff, or maybe if I enter the group and I decide to edit only this group and hide rest of the model, or maybe use the X-ray mode and select stuff which is behind a wall or a curtain, or even unhiding the last element. So those are the shortcuts. Now before I assign shortcuts, what I always do when I receive a model from a student or from a client is that I go to Windows, go to Model Info, and then I go to Statistics, and I always click on Purge Unused. This would delete any unnecessary objects in your model and almost always reduces your model size into half. So get into the habit of always purging your model. It'll make your models faster and in the long run help you save time as well. Alright, so to assign shortcuts, go to Windows, go to Preferences, and click on Shortcuts here. Now the first shortcut which I showed you was hide, so simply search for hide, and you can see that for edit hide I have F2 assigned. So click here, press F2 and click on the plus button. I've already assigned, so I'm simply going to click on yes. And do the same for edit unhide, which is F4, edit last, which is F3. And if you look at the bottom, we have something called view/component edit/hide rest of the model. So you can assign a shortcut J. This is what helps you hide rest of the model, and it helps in modeling your objects faster. The next shortcut which I would suggest is using the X-ray mode. So search for X dash here on filter. Select this, which is view/face style/X-ray, and assign the shortcut Y. I didn't assign the shortcut X because I generally use it to cut and paste objects in SketchUp. One last shortcut which I would suggest is the group. So simply search for group here and select the last option, which is edit/make group. Now you need to assign the shortcut G, and it will mention that it's been assigned to components. I generally use G for groups because I create more groups than components. So assign G to groups and then press OK. So to quickly show you guys the shortcuts again, select the group, whatever this is. So this is a group, and press F2 to hide, F3 to unhide. And if you select multiple items and press F2, you can press F4 to unhide all. The next option is if I'm editing a particular group, now for example this group, and I only want to see what is inside that group, press J to toggle visibility, and this helps in easy modeling. And also if you press Y, it would switch to the X-ray mode. Now finally, the last shortcut which I use is to make groups. So if, for example, if I make a rectangle here, instead of double clicking, right clicking and then clicking on make group, what you can do is just make the rectangle, double click and then press G. So I've selected the faces and edges and I made a group super fast. There's also an additional shortcut which I use, but you don't have to really follow it, which is Alt W, which simply switches from parallel projection to perspective, and Alt T, which goes to the plan view. So you can see that this is parallel projection, this is perspective, Alt T goes to plan view. So again, to assign this, go to Windows, Preferences, and search for top view. So you can see that I've assigned Alt plus T, and search for parallel projection, and you can see that I've assigned Alt plus W. This is similar to your shortcut in 3ds Max as well, where you can make a smaller window bigger. So that's all you need to do before you start on this course. Also make sure you've got Vray installed, and if you don't see these toolbars on top, just go to View, Toolbars, scroll to the bottom and you'll find these Vray toolbars, which you can then dock on the top of your menu bar. If you're not seeing this, which is our large toolset bar, go to View, Toolbars, and if I scroll to the bottom, you'll find large toolset bar. And of course, we need Vray 5 as well. So I'm going to quickly show you guys how to install Vray 5. Again, head back to your master link sheet. Click on Vray to open it up. Click on Try Free. You'll get a 30-day trial for Vray as well. Log in with your credentials. If you do not have an account, you can click on Create Account. I'm going to log in with my existing account. Once you've logged in, you'll be redirected to this page where you can select what you're going to use Vray for. Now, if you're a student, you can select student, and if you're an individual, you can select individual as well. So I'm going to click on individual and click on start my trial now. And now click on download trial. So you'll be redirected to the downloads link for Vray. Simply click on the latest version, which is Vray 5 for SketchUp Hotfix 2. Click on download for Windows and let it download to your computer. You will also receive a mail by Chaos Group dating the order number, order date, and your customer number. Once the file is downloaded, you can right click on the file and click on Run as Administrator. Click on Yes. Click on I agree. Install Vray for SketchUp 2021. And if you have SketchUp 2020, you can install it for 2020 as well. Click on Advanced. It's a good idea to install all of these as well, so that your licensing doesn't have any issue. So make sure you install License Server, Swarm, and Chaos Cloud. If you already installed Vray and it's not showing on SketchUp, I would suggest that you uninstall every version of Vray from your computer. Also make sure to uninstall Chaos Cloud Server before reinstalling Vray again. Now I'm going to click on Continue. I'm going to click on Install because mine is a local system. You will also need to close your SketchUp before proceeding with the installation. Click on Continue once you've closed SketchUp. And now it would start installing Vray for SketchUp. As you can see, I had not uninstalled my previous version. So Vray is going to do the uninstallation for me and then install the newer version of Vray. But I would suggest that you uninstall Vray on your own first and then try reinstalling Vray. Once you've installed Vray, you will be redirected to Chaos Group server page where you can check the license. Make sure you've installed and use the same email ID to download and install Vray. If you're not using the same email ID, or if Vray is reading your license from a different email ID, you will not be able to use Vray for SketchUp. So in that case, you need to click on sign out, click on yes, sign in again, and make sure you log in with the right credentials. Now we'll start SketchUp and see if it opens in SketchUp 21. If there is an option like this which shows up in your computer, make sure to click on allow access, and then you can drag in your plugins in place. Alright, so with this setup, we can now tackle our scene, which is our kitchen scene here, and create an awesome render. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers. Alright, in this video, we're going to set up our scenes, also known as the camera views, based on some photographic approaches. So I'm going to press F3 to unhide everything. I can see my slab on top as well. So the first thing you need to do is to create a section plane. So go to Tools and click on Section Plane. Now I'm going to click here on this side because I want the camera facing inside. So once you've placed your section plane, you'll get an option to name your section plane. I'm going to simply call it Section 1 and press OK. Now I'm going to select this. You can see that turns to blue, and then move it in. I'm just going to move it in so that the walls are not seen. Alright, so now I can place my camera. So the best way to place your camera is doing it arbitrarily by simply just moving in, by using the middle mouse button to scroll, and also using the shift and middle mouse button to pan, and making sure it looks good with your eye, and then simply creating a scene. So go to Scenes and click on the plus button. So that will create a camera view. Now there's few things that you need to note. So first thing is the field of view. So if I press Z on my keyboard, you can see that the field of view here is given as 11. Generally for interiors, 20 is a good number to go by in SketchUp. So I'm going to press 20 and press enter. I can see that it's zoomed out a lot more and the space feels a bit more elongated and not flat. Now if you give a field of view of say 50, it would feel a bit too elongated, and I'm not a big fan of this. So I'm going to keep it at around 20. You can keep it around 25 as well for interior scenes. A field of view of 50, 60 would work better for exterior views. Alright, so I'm just going to frame this better now. Just zoom in a bit. And then once you're happy with this, you can go to camera and click on 2-point perspective. So what that does is it straightens up all your vertical and horizontal lines. Just like in interior photography, they make sure that all their lines are perfectly vertical and horizontal. So now I'm going to update the scene and I'm done. So this is one way where you're going to do it with your eye, simply moving in using the orbit tool and the pan tool to frame your views better. The other way is to do it manually by drawing a line at the center of the space. So I'm going to draw a line. These lines generally don't show up in the render, so you don't have to worry too much about them as well. And now I'm going to draw a line from the midpoint. Now you don't see this line out because it's being cut by the section plane. So I'm going to deactivate the section plane. So right click and click on activate cut. So deactivated. You can see the line here. And now I'm going to place a camera here. So go to camera, click on position camera and place it in. So as soon as I place the position camera, it will switch to the eye tool. So you can left click and frame it to the center. You can press Y to see what is happening inside. And also you can see in the bottom right corner, we have the eye height. So before I switch to any tool, I'm going to adjust the eye height. And generally for interiors, it's a good idea to keep your camera at the same level as, for example, the kitchen island or some furniture or something else. If you keep it at a higher height, it wouldn't look that professional. It would look like you're looking down on a space. It's always good to look at the space at the same level. So I'm going to adjust the eye height. I'm going to change it to say 4 feet or 1200 mm. and this looks much better. You can also try 1150, which is 2 inches less. Alright, this looks good. And then I'm going to create another scene. So right click and click on add and click on create scene. Now the problem is there is a wall coming the way. So if I press Y, you can see that the wall is there. So we need to hide this wall, and the best way is not actually hiding the wall, but by activating the section plane. So go to your asset editor. If you're opening the asset editor for the first time, it will take some time to open up. Alright, and then go to geometries. You'll get section 1 here. Click on that. Click here to open the settings, and then simply toggle it on. So now the wall gets hidden or cut in this case, and I'm going to press Y to see the space, and then update the scene after you've activated the section. So this is scene 1, which is slightly zoomed out, and this is scene 2. Now you can press the Z key to activate the zoom tool and simply zoom out a bit so that I can see more of the space. And I can press the hand tool and just pan a bit more. And finally, I need to go to camera and click on 2-point perspective. Once you're happy with this view, you can right click and update. So this is scene 1, which shows a bit of the window, and this is scene 2. We're going to adjust these camera views again once we start an interactive render. So in the next video, we're going to set up our lights, start an interactive render, maybe adjust the views a little bit more, and then lit up our scene. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers. Hey guys, welcome back. Now in this video, we're going to set up the lights in our scene. So the first thing I need to do is start an interactive render. So go to your asset editor, go to settings, switch on interactive. You can use CUDA, which is a hybrid of the CPU and GPU. Or if you want pure GPU performance, you can switch to RTX. Now I should warn you that if you do not have a graphic card, RTX graphic card, and if you have a basic system, I would suggest that you stick to the CPU mode. But since I have a RTX 3070 graphic card, I'm going to switch to RTX. Now I'm going to increase the interactivity to high and also update the effects to rapid. Finally, I'll need to change the denoiser to NVIDIA AI. I'll also need to check the render output. So open this, and I'm going to switch on this save frame. So as soon as you switch this on, you can see how much of the space is getting rendered. And you can also switch between various aspect ratios. So since this is a larger kitchen, it would make sense to make it 16:9. So switch to 16:9 widescreen. So once you set all of this up, you can click on Render with Vray Interactive. So this is our view lit by the sun and the environment light. So I'm just going to move this to the side a bit and show you guys how it's getting lit. I'm also going to just orbit and zoom out to just see whether the sunlight is entering the scene from outside. So yes, it is. Now I don't want the light to enter from this part, which is the sectional part, because there is a wall here. So what you need to do is, you need to go to your asset editor, go to your geometries, click on section and open options, and you'll find an option called effect light. You simply need to switch this off, and now you can see that no light is going to be entering from the sectional side of the view. So I'm going to stop the render, and I'm going to go back to scene 1 and then click on Render with Vray Interactive. So now it's completely dark because firstly, the light is not entering from the section plane, and we've not applied a glass material for this window here. So you're going to quickly apply a glass material. So I'm going to stop the render, open your asset editor, go to your materials, click on generic, rename this, call this A_glass. And to quickly make it a glass, you simply need to go to reflection, increase the reflection value to full, keep the color diffuse to black, and also go to diffraction and increase the refraction color to full. You can also tweak the IOR settings. Generally for glass, the refraction IOR is slightly more, and the reflection IOR, switch this on, is slightly less, around 1.3. So this is a general setting for glass. Now if you want the exact setting of how a glass would look, you can open the Vray library here, go to glass, and if you're opening this for the first time, it may ask you to download the materials. So click on download to download all your Vray materials to your local drive. And I'm going to drag in a material called glass window neutral. So if you click on this glass window neutral, if you go to reflection, you can see the IOR values they've given. In fact, they've increased the reflection IOR and decreased the refraction IOR. I will be going in detail on these parameters in a different course on materials. Alright, so once you've created the material, select this material and then enter this group. Select your faces and edges. You can press J to see that you selected everything and then press B to apply the material. Similarly here as well. Also get into the group and see if it's applied in the inside face. Alright, looks good. Similarly this group as well. Alright, so we applied our glass, so now there can be some light which is going to come in from here. I also need to apply it here, so enter this group. Select this. Now if you triple click, it's going to select everything, so I don't really need to apply glass material on the frame. I just need to apply it on the shutter. So double click on this face, press G to make it a group. Then enter the group and make it a glass. Alright, so once you've made all of these glass materials, go back to scene 2 and then click on render with Vray Interactive. So you can see that now we have some light coming in and it's looking decent. So what you need to do now is you need to add these renders to your VFP history. So that way you can keep a tab on your renders and how you progress from a basic stage to a much more better looking render. So to do that, go to options, go to VFP settings, go to history, and then use a local folder to save your VFP history files. So click on save. I'm going to call this VFP and select the folder. So once you selected the folder, click on save and close. So now it would show up here on the left. If it doesn't, simply hover on the left. It will switch to this icon and then double click. Or you can drag it to the right as well. So now what I do is I click on the plus button and then it would create a copy of the render in my VFP. VFP, by the way, is the Vray frame buffer and this is where the render happens. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to adjust the sunlight and the environment light. So I'm going to stop the render. I'm going to go to my asset editor, go to lights. This is my sunlight here. And also go to settings and make sure your environment light is on. If it is off, then there will not be any environment light in your scene. So go back to sunlight. I'm going to drag this down so that I can see more of the light. And there's two ways to check your sunlight in SketchUp. The traditional way was simply going to view and clicking on shadows. And then if I scroll out, you can see that the shadow is falling from this angle. Now there's something to note about SketchUp is that the green axis is always pointed towards north. So this is north, this is south, this is east, and this is west. So since I'm facing the north and this is the evening sun, the sun is setting this way. Now if you want to adjust the shadows, you can go to your default tray and you'll get an option called shadows. So as you can see, the time is around 1:50, and if I drag it to the right, it goes towards the evening time slot. Now for this scene, the morning sun would work better, so I'm going to set it around 9. So now you can see there's a lot of light coming in, and I can also change the month. So I've adjusted the time, which is 8:45 in the morning and 5th of November. But the thing is, when I click on scene 2 again, it just adjusts back to the original time. So I'll need to update the shadow settings here again. So switch on shadows and I'm going to type in 8. 8 is fine, 8:30 and 11th November. And once you're happy with this sort of lighting setup, you can update the scene. So right click on scene 2 and click on update. But the problem is when I click on scene 1, it switches off the shadow, and if I'm zooming out and if I click on scene 2 again, you can see that the shadows also turn on. So this would slow down your system, so it's better to switch off your shadows. So go to view, switch off shadows, and then update your scene. Always keep your scenes updated without the shadows on. Alright, so now let's test this sun setting in our scene by running an interactive render. So you can go to your asset editor, check the settings once again. So interactive should be on, use RTX, update effects to rapid, and use the NVIDIA AI denoiser. So now once this is ready, click on render with Vray interactive. Alright, so you can see that we have the sun coming in, which is pretty decent. And I can now add this to the VFP history. So I'm going to add this here. And now if you click here, which is AB, you can assign this as A and this as B. So that's 3 clicks. So click once, then assign A here, assign B here, and then you can see the previous and the new renders. And click here again to come back to the original render. So this looks slightly better. So I'm going to delete this, right click, delete, and then add it again. Then assign it as A and B. Okay, so now we need to adjust our settings a little bit more. So the problem with SketchUp shadows is you don't really have too much of control on the angle of the shadow. But with the V-Ray sunlight shadows, you have more control. So I'm going to use the V-Ray sun shadows this time. So go to your asset editor, go to lights, click on sunlight, open this up. And we have something called custom orientation, which is part of V-Ray 5. You won't find this feature in your previous versions. So please try to use V-Ray 5 for this course. Now if I switch this on, it would switch on custom orientation. Now it only works with the V-Ray interactive on. So I'm going to run an interactive render. And now you can adjust the sun settings in your interactive mode. So I'm going to click here and then orient the light. I'm also going to zoom into the scene a bit more so that I can see where the light is falling. Alright, so now you can see there's some light coming in. And to make the shadow longer, I just need to adjust the shadow length here. Alright, so this setting looks cool. We have sort of a sunset setting inside our room. So I'm going to go back to scene 2. And then you can see the sun setting in our scene. So once you're happy with this setting, I'm going to stop the render. And I'm going to update the scene here. So let's see a before and after. This looks much better. Now there's few settings you can update in your sun setting as well. For example, if you want to make the shadows a little more softer, you can go to your asset editor, go to sun, scroll down, and then increase the size multiplier to around 10. So now if I run an interactive render, you can see the shadows are a little bit more softer. You can add another render and see the before and after. Alright, so we have our sunlight set up to a certain extent. Now we can add some interior lights to our kitchen. For example, we have this hanging ceiling light and also some down lights on the top. So let's do that quickly. So for this light, what you can do is enter the group and then select this group, which is our filament inside our bulb, and then click on convert to mesh light. So this would act as a light source. And for our downlight, what you can do is enter the downlight. I'm going to add a rectangular light. So click on the rectangular light, click once, and click the second time to place your rectangular light. Now I don't like the shape of this rectangular light, so I'm going to make it circular. So go to your asset editor, select the rectangular light, click here for shape and change it to disk. So now it will change to a small disk. So now we need to extend this. So press S to activate the scale tool and then drag the edges to the corners. It's also a good idea to just bring it down a bit. Alright, perfect. Since the downlight is a component, it's been applied on the other side as well. I'll also like some lights below the drawers so that it highlights the dado tiles or a wall tiles here. So I'm going to simply add a rectangle light. So click on the rectangle light, click once and click the second time to place your rectangle light. If you want to extend it, again activate the scale tool and then extend it to the edges. Alright, so we placed 3 lights, and one last light which we can place is also some lights for our chimney. So inside the chimney we have a bulb as well. So enter the group, select this group and click on convert to mesh light. So we have around 4 to 5 indoor lights as well. So now I'm going to go back to scene 2. Now before I run an interactive render, I'm just going to go to my lights. I'm going to rename these. So this is our hanging light, then this is our chimney lights, and this is our down light. Finally, we have our LED light which comes under the drawer. In the next video, we will use a latest feature in Vray 5 called Lightmix to light up our scene using the interior lights and also our daylight setting. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers. Alright, so we have 4-5 lights. I'm not going to adjust the values here, but rather I'm going to use a new feature in Vray 5 which is called Lightmix and adjust the lights in the Vray frame buffer. So to add a light mix, you can click here and add a light mix here. So it's added to our render element. And now I'm going to go back to scene 2 and click on render with Vray Interactive. Alright, so you can see our lights here. Now we can adjust the lights in the Vray frame buffer directly. So click on source light mix. So now we have all these lights listed out individually. But this is not what I want. I probably want to group these lights together as one single light. So I'm going to stop the render. I'm going to click on light mix and then you'll get a parameter where you can group by instances. So click on group by and click on group by instances. So now if I run an interactive render and click on light mix, they all come as one entity. Alright, now before I change the values of these lights, what I'm first going to do is increase the overall brightness of our scene in our Vray settings and also add some VFB layers which would be super useful in increasing the brightness in your scene. So I'm going to stop the render, minimize this, go to your asset editor, go to settings and go to camera. So under camera we have an option called exposure value. Now the greater the number, or if you slide this to the left, the darker the image is. So 19 would make it super dark, and what it does is each time you increase this to the left or to the right, it would adjust the values in your advanced camera parameters. So you can see that the ISO reduces to a really low number. So in architectural photography or photography in general, it's always a good idea to keep a lower ISO number, which is generally around 100 to 200, and that would reduce the noise in your image as well. But in the Vray program, you do not really have to worry about the ISO number. What it generally means is that if you have a lower ISO number, the image would become darker. And if you drag this EV to the right, you can see that the ISO number increases and this would make the image brighter. So you're going to keep an exposure value of around 10, which works well for interiors, 10 or even 9. If you want to render exteriors, it's a good idea to keep your exposure value at around 14. So we'll leave it at 10. And then run an interactive render. Alright, so now you can see that our image brightens up really fast and there's a lot of burnt out areas in the image. So what we can do is maybe just increase the EV value a bit more because this feels a little too burnt out. So let's go back to our asset editor here and maybe change this to 11. And now let's open our VFB window. Alright, this looks a bit better. What I could also do is maybe just go to our curves layer. If you haven't added a curves, you can simply click here and click on curves and then just drag the slider to the bottom a bit. Similarly, this slider as well. Alright, and also go to exposure. If you want to add an exposure, click here and add an exposure and reduce the highlight burns even more. So if you keep it all the way to the right, you can see that we have a lot of burnt out areas in the image. So I'm just going to drag it to the left a bit. Now we can adjust these light values a bit more in our light mix. So click on the light mix option here. And now I can adjust certain values. Now, for example, if I click on here it switches off all the lights. So I can adjust the lights one by one. So if I click on sunlight, this is our first light. You can see that it has a profound impact in the scene. You can reduce the sunlight amount if you wanted to have less of an impact in the scene. You can also change the color of your sunlight, make it more warmer or even cooler. Next is our chimney lights. Now it's not having much of an impact, so let's change it to 100. So now you can see that there's a light here. But I think I don't really need the chimney light for the scene, so I'll just keep it at 1. Next is our hanging light, which is this light here. Now if you want to really see the impact of this light, you'll have to switch off the sunlight. So I'm going to switch off the sunlight. And now you can see that we have this hanging light here. So maybe I can change it to around 10. So that would light up our kitchen island countertop. Next is our downlight. So switch on the downlight and it switches on these two lights here. The downlight can be increased to a certain extent, so maybe 30. And that would light up our scene. So this is more of a night render. So you can create a night render without having to render again using the Lightmix here. It's also a good idea to change the temperature value to slightly warmer. Then we have our LED light here, the background. Click here and change the light to slightly warm. Alright, and then we also have an additional light called the environment light, which lights up the entire room. So you can see the environment light gives that softer shadows and gives us a softer daylight setup, but you can also mix it up with the sunlight as well. So you can play around with all of these lights. You can also add it to your VFB. Now, for example, if I add this and add this, then I can see the difference between these two lights. So you can do a lot with the Lightmix. And you can of course adjust it later as well. So once you adjusted all your values, now for example, I'm going to save this light setting out so that I can load it later. Now this is a day setting, so I'm going to click on save and I'm going to call this day setting with sun and click on save. So this is a Lightmix file. Next, I'm going to switch off the sunlight and keep only the environment light. So click on save and I'm going to call this soft light and click on save. Finally, I can also save out a night render setup. So in that case, I can switch off the environment light, or you can just reduce the environment light value and maybe even make it darker. So we have a sort of a moonlight coming in. Maybe you can also change it to change the color. So you have sort of a street light setting entering your scene. How cool is that? So if you're happy with this, or you can just switch off the environment light, click on save and save this as a night setting. Now, if you want to load your daylight setting, instead of tweaking the values here, you can simply click on load and then load the daylight setup. So I hope you guys found this video useful. We can use this lighting setup for the rest of the course, which looks pretty decent as well. The next video, I will show you how to use the dome light setting and light up your scene. And I'll also show you how you can leverage Chaos Cosmos to bring in awesome HDRIs into your scene. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers. Hey guys, welcome back to yet another video. Now in this video, we're going to be using how to use the dome light to light up a scene. So to start off, you need to add your dome light into your scene. So to add it, you can add it from the Vray light toolbar here. It generally looks like this, which is a half dome. So click on the dome light and you can place it anywhere in your scene. So I'm just going to click somewhere here in the space. So you placed our dome light here. It doesn't really matter because it sort of envelopes the entire space with the dome light. And what the dome light does is that it emanates the HDRI colors into your scene. So if you have a night HDRI, then you would get colors from that night HDRI image to light up your scene. Or if you have an evening HDRI image, that would light up the scene with the evening sun or the evening HDRI image. Now, if you want to download your own HDRIs, you can go to hdrihaven.com, click on HDRIs, and we have various HDRI images here. So you can test out your scene for any of these HDRI images and see how it affects the lighting in your scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Chaos Cosmos HDRI and then bring it into our dome light setting. So let's start the interactive render and see how this dome light affects our scene. So let's go to scene 2. It's also a good idea to switch off the sunlight and the environment light, or you can also switch it off in your Lightmix. So let me run an interactive render first and then switch it off. Alright, so if I go to my source Lightmix here, you can see that we have our dome light here, we have our environment light, and we also have our sunlight. So there's too many natural lights happening in our scene. So I would recommend that you switch it off. So let me see what happens if I switch this off now. You can see that this is the dome light setup. Alright, so let me just first switch this off. So stop the render, go to your asset editor, go to sunlight and switch it off here. Also go to settings and you'll have the environment light here, which I can switch off by taking this off. Alright, so we have only our dome light to light up our scene now. So let's run an interactive render again. You will see the sunlight going off from the Lightmix. So you can see the sunlight goes off. And even if you switch on this environment light, it won't have much of impact since it's already off in the Vray settings. Alright, so this is our dome light and it reads from the default light in the texture slot. So if I go to my asset editor, go to texture. So this is the environmental sky which is being added, which is again from the sunlight. So if you want to add a custom HDRI, let me stop the render. You can open something called the Chaos Cosmos, which is a new feature in Vray 5. So it is generally found next to your asset editor. So click on Chaos Cosmos to open it up. So this is the Chaos Cosmos library. So it has a lot of 3D models like people, vehicles, furniture and more. And it also has a list of HDRIs. So if I click on HDRIs, it has a collection of day and even evening HDRIs. So if you want to download your own HDRI, you can go to any HDRI and then click on and open it up to see what it looks like, and then just click on download. So once it's downloaded, you can then add it to your scene. Alright, so HDRI is downloaded and it's shown that the asset is downloaded successfully. So if you want to load it, you can simply click the icon changes here and you can click here to load this to your scene. But in our case, I'm going to use the day 26 HDRI. So click here and that would load it into our scene or to our asset editor. So close this, open the asset editor. And now under textures, you can see that we have day 26 and day 31. I don't need the day 31, so I'll remove this. Right click, delete. Click on delete. And to use the day 26 in your dome light, you can simply right click, copy, go to your lights here, click on dome light, and then right click here and click on paste as instance. So if you change the settings in the texture slot here, it would affect the dome light as well. So let's go to our dome light here. Now the first thing you need to do is change the shape from hemisphere to sphere so that it affects the entire scene. And also go to the texture slot and go to texture placement, and you can rotate the HDRI using the rotate value here. But to make this work, you will have to switch off use transform. So now we can run an interactive render and then change the values of a dome light. Now before I do that, one additional step which I would recommend if you don't have too much of flooring in your space is that you add a infinite plane. So what the infinite plane does is it adds a ground till your horizon line here, and that would help bounce the light or the Vray light from the ground back to your scene. So to add an infinite plane, click here, which is the infinite plane, and simply add it in your scene. Also make sure the infinite plane is not in the same line as your floor, as it would overlap with the floor. So select the infinite plane, press M to activate the move tool. Click on this corner here, press the top arrow key, and then just bring it down to the bottom of the slab. Alright, so we've added our infinite plane and also our dome light, and now we can check how this lighting looks. So click on render Vray interactive, and this is our lighting setup. Now I can go to my source Lightmix and increase the dome light a bit. So you can click on the slider and just drag it on top. So you can see that increasing the lighting in our scene, but you can see that it also creates these smudges in our scene, which is not useful when you're doing interactive renders, as you cannot see the final product. You don't really have to worry about these smudges because when you do the final render, using progressive or bucket rendering, it would get rid of these smudges. The smudge simply means that it is trying to calculate how the lights are bouncing off this space here. So to resolve this, what you can do is simply wait till it goes away. As you can see, as the interactive render progresses, it goes away. Or you can just stop the render, go to your asset editor, go to settings, and in your EV value, adjust the EV value first. So maybe I'll keep it at around 9 since the space has become darker after adding a dome light, and then run an interactive render again. So now if I keep my dome light to 1, you can see that the smudginess goes away a little more faster. So adjust the EV value first and then adjust the Lightmix settings here. So with the dome light setting, this is the only drawback which I saw, is that you will see some amount of smudginess in your interactive render. Alright, so let's add this to the VFP and see the difference between the dome light setting and the environment light setting. So add it here and then assign this to A and this maybe to B, and then you can see the difference between the lighting setup. So the dome light is slightly brighter than the environment light setting, but of course the sunlight setting is much more brighter. So you guys can pick and choose which one you would like to go with. Also, if you want to adjust the dome light in the scene, instead of rotating it here manually, you can go to your lights, click on dome light, open the texture slot here, and then adjust the values here. So as I change this, you can see the lighting also changes in your scene. So play around with the HDRI settings and also the definite HDRIs and see which lighting setup best suits your scene. So this was a quick tutorial in using the dome light. I will be using the regular sunlight and the environment light for the rest of the course, and then create our materials and add some PBR materials and then make our kitchen render pop. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers. Hey guys, welcome back to yet another video. Now in this video, we're going to add materials into our kitchen scene in the fastest way possible using the Vray material library that comes with Vray 5 and curated by Chaos Group. So to access your default Vray library, you can click on the asset editor and then you'll get this left arrow key or the button. So click on that and it would expand the library here. Now this is my own library which I'm going to close. So right click close. I will be showing how you can create your own library in the next video. So if you're opening this for the first time, you will get an option to download these materials into your local drive. And if you want to specify a specific folder you want to download it into, or you can specify that later as well, you can go to settings and under configuration, you have an option called download location. So if you change this, the materials will be changed to this folder. So that's a quick tip into those who want to save space in their C drive. So in the default library, you have different categories. And then of course we have various materials for these categories. So we'll quickly apply some materials into our scene and then apply it onto our objects. So to use the default materials, you will need to drag this into your asset editor here. So the first thing which I'm going to drag is the flooring. So let's go to wood and laminate. Scroll down and you'll find flooring parquet herringbone BO1 120 centimeters. So just drag this, click and drag this to your asset editor here. So now it's part of your asset editor. You can also rename this if you'd like. So for example, A_flooring_wood. All right. And you can also tweak the values, but I would suggest that you leave these values as is because it comes with the bitmaps that Chaos Group provides. If you want to learn more about all of these materials, and it's a good way to learn how to create materials, is to simply drag these materials and check the bitmaps and all of that which Chaos Group has used to create this material. So as you can see, we have a reflection map, a bump map, and so on. So there's two ways to apply this material in your scene. The first way, and the easiest way I would suggest, is that you select this material. Each time you select a new material in Vray, it also changes here in the SketchUp default tray. So you can see that it changes. So with this material selected, I'm going to close this window. I'm going to apply it on my floor. So all you need to do is enter the group. You can select the face or using the select tool, then press B to activate the bucket tool. and then just click once to apply this material. The other way is to, let me just undo, Ctrl Z, is to select the face and then go to your asset editor, right click here and click on apply to selection. You can also apply to layer, so it's a good idea to have consistent layers in your SketchUp model so that it's easier to apply materials. So in our case, I'm going to apply it to selection. So now you can see that it's applied in our scene. Now the problem is that this material is scaled down really small. So if you want to check the size of this material or the seamless texture, just go to your default ray here, click on edit, and you can see that it's 254 mm by 254 mm. What I would suggest is that you scale it to the correct size, which you can see in the Vray default library, which is 120 centimeters. So in this case, since our model is in mm, you can type in 1200 mm. So this is the actual size of the texture and the material. Now 1200 for all those in feet and inches is around 4 feet. Alright, so you apply the first material. Now let's check this material in our interactive render. So let me go back to scene 2 and also switch on the sunlight and the environment light, because I'm going to be using that setup for the rest of the course. So go to lights, click on sunlight and switch this on, and you can switch off the dome light. So select the dome light and switch this off, and also go to your settings, go to environment and switch on the environment light as well. Alright, so now with scene 2 selected, I'm going to click on render with Vray Interactive. Alright, great. So now you can see that it has a great impact on the scene and makes it look much more better with our wooden flooring. I would also need to add a skirting, but I'll add that later. Let me just switch off the sunlight since it makes the space a little burnt out. I'm just going to use the environment light for some time and maybe just increase the environment light. Keep it around 2 so there's more light entering the scene. So we'll use the environment light, and maybe towards the end after the render, we can use the sunlight as well. We can save multiple renders, so it's not an issue. Alright, now I'm going to add this to the history here. So click on add, and now we can jump to the next material. So stop the render and let's jump to the next material. Go to your asset editor. Now I would suggest that for the fridge here that you use a car paint material. So select the car paint. So you can drag any of this car paint materials. It can be aluminum, can be gray. So let's drag this car flakes gray. Go back to your materials here and let's drag this in. Alright, I like this material and we can apply this on our fridge. So close the asset editor. This is our fridge. Just enter the group and then press B to activate the bucket tool and apply it on the fridge. It's also a good idea that after you apply the material, that you click on something called triplanar projection world, which will uniformly apply the material on the UVs of this object and also makes the UVs perfectly uniform so that none of your materials get skewed. I generally get into the habit of clicking on triplanar projection world so that I don't have to correct any wrong UVs applied on an object. I'll similarly apply it here at the bottom as well, and I'll apply it for the body as well. Alright, so I've applied my fridge material as well. Now I can go back to scene 2 and then run an interactive render again. So you can see that we have a nice glossy fridge which is reflecting the light as well. You can of course adjust the values if you feel that this fridge is a little too reflective. Simply go to your asset editor, go back here and you can reduce the reflection values. So before we head to the next video, I would recommend you guys to try and add some of these materials to your kitchen model here and then render out an interactive scene. So if you want to save this render, you can click here on save and then save it to your local drive as a PNG. So go ahead, try rendering it out with different materials, but I will of course show you guys how to create actual materials in Vray like high gloss laminates, dado tiles, lacquered glass, and then add some decor and a whole lot more. So stay tuned, it's going to get a lot more interesting. This was to just show you a quick way to create renders with the default materials in case your client is paying you really low and you need to get a render done super fast. So the next video I will show you how to create your own awesome Vray library which you can use for future projects and which will definitely speed up your Vray workflow. and create awesome renders in the fastest time possible. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers. Hey guys, welcome back to yet another video. Now in this video, we're going to learn how to use PBR materials in our SketchUp scene. So what exactly is a PBR material? PBR is a shading method that mimics how light interacts with surfaces in the real world in 3D space. Now don't get too confused about that. Once we start applying these materials, it would make more sense. So to start off, I'm going to apply a white marble material for my wall here. So this wall is generally called a dado tile here in India, in which we apply between the cabinets or also the entire wall as well, which is above the bottom cabinet. So to start off, I'm going to open the asset editor. By the way, I have a deep voice now because I got a cold. I think it would go away in a few days. So in the previous versions of Vray, to add a PBR material, you had a separate option called PBR. But now Chaos Group has integrated PBR into the generic material. So you can simply add a generic material. Now I'm going to rename this and call this A_white marble. Now I'm going to click here to open the parameters. And what I've done is I've used a material from Polygon. Polygon is a great website for you guys to download textures, models, HDRIs and more. And it has a lot of PBR materials as well. So there are some free assets which you can test out and see how it works in SketchUp. But once you get deep into PBR materials, I would highly recommend that you buy their credits as well. Another website is Ambient CG, which was previously known as COO Textures. If you go to Assets, you can see that we have various PBR materials. So PBR materials is the closest form to make a material look really realistic because it contains 16K and 8K textures, which are really big in size as well. So PBR materials can be created on Substance Textures, which is a software to create materials, or you can also sometimes use Photoshop. Another free website is SketchUp Textures Club, which has a lot of materials and also some PBR materials here. So do check out these websites and try testing out these materials in your scene as well. To start off, I'm going to load my marble map or the diffuse map, which essentially represents the material. So click here and click on bitmap. Now go to your exercise folder and find this marble 03 material. So this is our marble material which you're going to use. Now these materials will be used in other parameters which I will show you shortly. So click on color 6K JPG and click on open. By the way, if you're downloading a PBR material, the one which looks closest to the material is the one which you would add in the diffuse texture slot. So click here and click on open. So we've loaded in our material. Now let's go back. So this of course is a marble material. What I'll also do is I'll change the representation because it's a flow material. So click here and click on flow. Alright, so now we need to make this material reflective. So there's two ways. One is to simply drag your reflection slider to the right. That would make it reflective. The other way is to add a map which comes with the PBR materials. So click here, click on bitmap, and let's see if we have a reflection map. We do. It's called reflection, REFL, which stands for reflection. Now this is sort of a gray map, so we need to use the rendering space. So let me load this first. So click here and click on open. And you need to change the color space from screen space to rendering. So you can see that makes it a bit more brighter. And whatever is going to be brighter or lighter is going to be more reflective compared to what is going to be darker. So if the bitmap is darker, then you would not get a very reflective surface. So let's go back. Alright, it's still pretty reflective. What I'll do is add a reflection glossiness as well. So let's go to bitmap again. And we have a gloss map here. So click here and click on open. These maps, it's a good idea that you change the color space to rendering. It makes it sort of brighter and it reads the actual bitmap. So let's go back. Alright, it's still looking good. You can see that as soon as I added that, the glossiness sort of went down. So if you want to make it more glossy, you can sort of tweak this bitmap. There's two ways to tweak it. One is by adding a color correction, layer on top of this bitmap, or you can also go to color manipulation here and simply drag your color offset to the right. So you can see that our bitmap becomes brighter. So now if you go back, you can see that it's become a little more glossy. The other way is to right click here, go to wrap in and click on color correction. And now you have an option here to increase the brightness of the bitmap. So now if I go back, it's a lot more glossy. So the more brighter your bitmap is, the more glossy or reflective the image becomes, or the material becomes. Alright, next is to add a bump to this material to give it a 3D illusion or that little 3D effect. So I'm just going to drag down and we have a bump slot here. So to click here to open this up. Now I'm going to add a normal map. So click here and click on bitmap again to load your normal maps. So this is a normal map. So generally we use it in the bump texture slot. So click here and click on open and change this to rendering space linear. So normal mapping is a technique used for faking the lighting or bumps and dents in your materials. And it's commonly stored as an RGB image where the RGB components corresponds to the X, Y and Z coordinates. Now I'm sure this would go over your head, so don't worry too much about it. Just remember that you need to add your normal texture slot to the bump map, and also you need to change the mode, which is bump map here, to normal map. So if you load it to a bump map, it wouldn't work. Make sure you load it with the right mode, which is normal map. Alright, so we've created our first PBR material. Now let's apply it on our object. So I'll show you another way to apply materials, which is simply select the group and then right click here and click on apply to selection. So you can see that it's applied. And it's a good idea to increase the size of your texture. So you can see that tiling is happening in our material. So go to your materials in the default tray, go to edit. So it's at 254 mm. I'm going to change this to around say 900 mm. And we have a more realistic, larger marble material applied. We're going to adjust this tiling here in Photoshop. So don't really worry too much about it. You do get seamless marble materials. It depends on what you use. Now in this case, we have these large spotches, so you can't really do much with it. But try to get some materials which are seamless, and then you do not have to do extra work in Photoshop as well. Alright, so I'm happy with this. Now let's go to scene 2 and run an interactive render. Before that, let me just check the asset editor settings. Alright, looks good. And click on run with Vray Interactive. Alright, so you can see our marble texture here. And you can also see a lot of smudges here. Now the reason behind these smudges is that because Vray is still calculating the light bounce inside these cabinets and also this wall area here. So if you want to quickly remove these smudges, the best way is to add some additional lights in your scene. Maybe some light falling from this side into the room. So I'm going to stop the render and add a light here. So click on the rectangular light, add it here. So there's going to be some light falling towards the side of the room. And once you add a light, it makes the calculation of that light bounce much more easier. So that's something called global illumination in Vray, which is simply the light bouncing off from one surface and bouncing from another, and so on and so forth. So this would help reduce the calculations required to figure out the lighting in this space. Now, I'm going to leave this as is because once we do the final render, the smudges would go away. So let's go back to scene 2. And now let's check our render with the additional light on the side. So click on render with Vray Interactive. As you can see, there is no smudginess happening here because we placed a light on the corner there. Alright, so this is our marble, which looks good. Alright, so we've come to the end of this video. Now this course is a continuation of a larger course called the Complete Vray 5 for SketchUp for Kitchen Design. Now if you want to check it out, head to the link in the description. There's a bonus 15 to 20 lectures which will definitely help you create awesome renders. Now there's more content like this coming soon. Do check out my other courses as well. It's helped a lot of students and I'm sure it's going to help you out as well. I'll see you guys in the next video. Oh, and by the way, please do like and subscribe. It goes a long way in keeping me motivated in releasing quality, decent content for y'all. I'll see you guys in the future videos. Cheers.